Adam, we got Florida out there, and of course, Florida was a state that had it for a hot minute, no longer, and we're trying to figure out what's going on down there.
Yeah, if you ask Calvin Ridley, probably a hot minute too long. So Florida right now is kind of in a waiting state, and we were waiting 45 days past the district court ruling, I should say the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals ruling, that essentially seemed to clear the path again for Florida to relaunch its sports betting app with Hard Rock. But it will have to probably wait just a little bit longer because Wes Flagler Associates, who was the one involved in bringing this case in the first place against the compact signed by the Seminole Tribe and Governor Ron DeSantis, has filed for a rehearing en banc. And for those of you who don't want to get into junior law school stuff, essentially what they've done is mom and dad told you can't go on the field trip. It's their final decision. But you go back one more time, you're like, are you sure? And that's kind of where we are right now, because getting that rehearing en banc is a long shots for Wes Flagler Associates, for the district, I should say the Circuit Court of Appeals, to reevaluate its own decision, because what essentially happens is it's a panel of that larger Circuit Court of Appeals that makes the initial decision. You ask for a rehearing with the entire court. It's rare. There usually would have to be something that would be wrong with the decision, according to what we know from John Holden, our legal expert. And we'll have a piece up today from John Holden further explaining what he sees as the next steps here. But still possible that we see Florida with Hard Rock this NFL season, because technically they could choose to relaunch during this time, but they would be risking having to launch and shut down.
Dustin, I do want to ask you this, because we're, obviously Florida, a massive state and all that, tons of sports, tons of college sports, tons of pro sports, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, as far as like the market itself, I don't think we're really kind of jumping up and down about its prospects, because it's going to be so restrictive. Like, am I out of line in saying that?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it's going to be a monopoly. There are paths to where you could, that other brands could partner with the Seminole Tribe and also be able to do that. That would come at great expense, potentially. So it's feasible. But yeah, right now as we sit here, what's the impetus for, we've even heard Hard Rock say in the past, like, we would welcome other brands and some competition in the market. Is that true today as it was then? Who knows? The bottom line is, I don't think they want to launch without some pretty good certainty that they're not going to have to close it down again. Because that would be pretty bad, right? Like, you already opened, you got your false start, right? Opened once, had to shut it down. If you did it again, man, then you're really confusing people. If you're like, oh, we're open, guess what? We're closed again. Like, if you did it a third time, I'm not sure people would believe you, right? Like, so I think I would imagine we're going to not see this actually launched until they're very certain that there's not any chance of them getting, going back into shutdown mode again anytime in the near future, because that would be such a bad customer experience and could, really kind of make Florida sports betting just bad moving forward. Like, it would be so confusing for the user if they had to shut it down again. So, while it's possible, I think they're going to make sure that they're sure before they do anything about relaunching that app.
And Adam, unlike a lot of these states that, we're kind of holding out, and, we're like, you're costing yourself money because these people can just cross the border and go to XYZ in this major cities here, and here. Like, that's just like not the case in Florida, right? I mean, it's basically like you are definitely pushing everybody offshore. Like, I mean, like there is no way for, if you live in Miami, you're not going anywhere. Like, you're going offshore, right? I mean, like there's just no way for you to, even if you had in your heart, like the truest of intentions in your heart, you wanted to bet legally. I mean, you just can't do it. So you're going to Bobby the bookie down the street, or you're betting offshore.
I know Bobby. Be nice to Bobby. We want ultimately for the Florida market to have the same choices that other markets do. But right now, the choice is essentially going to be, if they get it back, Hard Rock, or Hard Rock. And we have no idea if the product's going to be any good, right? We know there are people who have had success in online gaming behind the product. That's great. It gives you at least a start to believe in. We've seen the product in a couple of other states. So we know that it at least functions. it has not been a contender anywhere else. It has not made any sort of impact. And so if it's going to make an impact, it's going to make an impact because it's the only game in town when it comes to Florida. But as you said, Matt, if people are savvy, if there are people who've done this before, then you're going to have to come up with something that's better than what they have already for them to become regular customers.
I'd be remiss if we didn't also mention that you could place parlays at daily fantasy sports sites in Florida right now if you wanted to.
What are you, Dustin? I've never heard of this before.
Dustin lobbing the grenade right there at the end. Good stuff.